Hello friends, how are you? Myself Pushpender Singh, and we are going to start with our daily current affairs. So today you have 6th of July 2021. As you know that these lectures are based on the current affairs, and we are basically referring the two national newspapers. The first, The Hindu, and second is Indian Express. Okay, both of these newspapers are equally good for your civil services examination, which is conducted by the UPSC. You can supplement your preparation with the help of these lectures. So let's begin with the lecture. Okay, so first news is all about the COVID Global Conclave. So what is COVID? As you have seen, as you have experienced, also you would have registered yourself for the vaccine of the corona on the COVID platform, right? So COVID means it is the COVID Vaccine Intelligence Network. Okay, so recently the Prime Minister Narendra Modi have addressed the COVID Global Conclave on 5th of July 2021. The main purpose of addressing the COVID Global Conclave is to provide free of cost, right, the digital public good to other countries, right. This is one form of digital public good which is in the form of the COVID platform or the COVID digital platform, right, in order to provide the COVID-19 inoculation drives in other countries. So as many as 50 countries participated, right, in this COVID Global Conclave, including Canada, Mexico, Nigeria, Panama, Uganda, right. The India would be ready to offer any sort of a assistance in respecting of the development of this COVID-like platform to run their own vaccination drives for that purpose. Okay, so as you know, the COVID means the COVID Vaccine Intelligence Network. Okay, now as in the month of January 2021, the platform was first unveiled by the Union government in that respect. Okay, and it was launched when the vaccination drive was basically launched in our country. The website was created. As you have seen that if you put just on Google, you can easily go through the COVID website, right, where the users can basically register themselves, they book for their vaccine slots, right, and they can also keep track their vaccination drive or vaccination schedule. They can download their COVID vaccination certificate also from this COVID website. Okay, so at the back end, it was also allowed the healthcare professionals to manage the vaccine stocks also, and also to keep a track of the workflow. So it's very, very important, the digital public good. Okay. And the primary feature is very, very important, is to give the users a chance to book the vaccine slot anywhere in the country, right, wherever you are. So users just have to register themselves on the platform and they will be able to register themselves, and based on that they can book their slot. So CoWIN also gives the users an opportunity to download these certificates along with that. Okay, now as I told you that COVID means the COVID Vaccine Intelligence Work. It was introduced in January 2021 in order to provide the users, right, the opportunity to get registered and to get vaccinated. Okay, now what technology India would be giving to the other countries in this COVID network conclave? So government of India has made it clear that the code for the COVID will be made as open source software. Okay, and government won't attach any intellectual property right for that, basically the COVID like software. So there will not be any intellectual property right for that. And the government also said that the code will be given to the countries, right, that are looking for an orderly and transparent vaccination program in their country. So government will not allow any commercial use of that platform, okay, or for it to be repacked in another form, right. It will be only for the public purpose, that too for a transparent and orderly vaccination drive. For that purpose, the main motto of the vaccination will be completed with that aspect. Okay, and government of India is ready to give any sort of assistance in the form of providing this code free of cost to the countries whichever would like to have those code with that aspect. Okay, let's move to the next news. Okay, next news is about mRNA Vaccine Technology grant. So the Ignite Life Science Foundation, which was recently been awarded the first grant award, for the pandemic preparedness, specifically for mRNA vaccine. Okay, so your researchers will get these funds, right? Belongs to the Indian Institute of Science and Transnational Health Science and Technology Institute, Faridabad. Okay, this research team would basically work out for this, development of this mRNA vaccine technology, right, for the purpose of reduction of this pandemic. Okay, so this grant, which is basically an amount, right, which was not disclosed, but that will definitely support the researchers, right, for developing the first time in our country the technology platform in the form of mRNA vaccine technology, right, which is very much important to make and test the novel mRNA vaccines, right, which are also there in the market. So the work will be in the form of, right, the basis for the India's ability to respond quickly on the future pandemics that may also arise, right, and also to respond the new variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So this grant will be given, right, to those researchers, and this grant will be given initially for 3 years, right, and and with that fund research to develop all sort of a platform technology for mRNA vaccine development, their testing, right, their efficacy, everything will be based on this mRNA vaccine technology. And this mRNA vaccine development technology is very, very vital for India, right, as you know that because of rapid and effective response which is very much needed for the future pandemic, of related to the SARS-CoV-2 virus, as well as for successful execution of this project will definitely seed the creation of much needed capacities in terms of mRNA vaccine development in our country. So the investigators, will not only work on developing the vaccine against the new variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, but also the attempts will be made to develop the methods for the generation of this RNA vaccine through this, the funding process, which would be very, very critical for the research point of view, specifically for the poorer countries, specifically in the tropical region, like the country like India is also located over there. Okay. The next news is all about the panel which is as an advisor to prevent the digital monopolies. Okay, so here the government has set up a 9-member advisory panel or 9-member advisory council, right, which also include the Nitin Nilekani, right, from the Infosys, as well as the CEO of National Health Authority, Mr. R.S. Sharma, right. And the main purpose of setting up of this 9-member advisory council to design and to accelerate the adoption of the open network of digital commerce. This open network of digital commerce is very, very important to prevent any sort of a digital monopoly in the market. So it's very, very important. The Department of Promotion and Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, right, in that order, right, has said that it has initiated the project that is Open Network for Digital Commerce, right, and the task for that purpose has already assigned to the Quality Council of India to prevent any such digital monopolies in the market. So here, this Open Network for Digital Commerce, right, aims at promoting of the open networks that will be developed on the open source methodologies without any monopolies with that respect, and there will be open specifications, open network protocols, right, for that purpose, independent of any specific platform, so that anyone could use it, right, with much ease. So it is expected to digitize the entire value chain, okay, and it will also standardize all sort of operations. It will also promote the inclusion of the suppliers in that respect, and it will also the logistic efficiencies, the enhancement of the values of the consumers will also be gained over the period of the time. And it is also being decided to set up some sort of an advisory council for that purpose, to advise the government for that purpose. Okay, right, and the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade have said that they have already initiated this project, right, ONDC, and the task has been assigned for the Quality Council of India. Okay, as you have seen that this is a 9-member body, right. This Quality Council of India's, right, the chairperson Mr. Adil Zainul Bhai, right, will be the member of this 9-member committee or 9-member council, right? It will also have the Avana Capital founder, Miss Anjali Bansal, right? The Digital India founder, Arvind Gupta, the National Payment Corporation of India CEO, Dilip Abse, right? National Security Depositor, MB, Mr. Suresh Sethi, and the Secretary General of CAIT, Mr. P. Khandelwal, would also be a part of this 9-member committee. Apart from that, the Retailers Association of India's CEO, Mr. Rajagopalan, would also be a member of this 9-member council that would provide some sort of a advice to the government of India regarding these, preventing these monopolies in that respect. Okay. The next, the China's launched the new meteorological satellite. So it's a very, very important. China on 5th of July 2021 have successfully launched the new meteorological satellite, right? This new meteorological satellite basically carrying the 11 remote sensing payloads, okay, which is enhancing the country's, the weather forecasting capabilities with the help of this meteorological satellite with those payloads, and very, very important. And it will monitor also the global snow coverage also, right, as well as it will also measure the sea surface temperature. So it's very, very important for the China's increasing the capacity for basically this meteorological satellite, and this satellite have already been launched into the planned orbit from the Jack-1 satellite launch center, which is currently located in the northwest China. Okay, as I told you that it is equipped with the 11 remote sensing payloads. So these payloads are basically providing a lot of data. So it's a world first meteorological satellite in early morning orbit for the civil services for that purpose, which is launched by the China. And it will be basically having a design life of around 8 years, right? And it will mainly obtain the atmospheric temperature, right, the data, the humidity, other meteorological parameters, which will also be provided by this meteorological satellite, and that will basically improve the China's weather forecasting capacity in that aspect. It will also monitor, as I told you, the global snow cover, the sea surface temperature, the natural disasters, right, so that the ecology can be better respond to the climate change. It will also also provide the data related to some sort of a prevention and the mitigation of the meteorological disasters, right. It will also measure, right, apart from these things, it will also measure the solar and space environments, their effects, right, and it will also provide you a lot of data related to the space weather forecast and supporting services with that respect. Okay. Next. Now, one thing that is coming to your mind is, like, recently, the new president of the USA have recently says that by September, right, by September 11th, right, all the US troops will be withdrawn from the country, called Afghanistan. So it's a very, very important news, right, whether the US war in the Afghanistan is get over, or is there something itself is remaining over there. So the US troops is basically prepared to leave the Afghanistan soil for the first time after it was announced, right, that the war is getting over. But whether really the war is getting over, that is another question that will be coming to your mind. So here the decision which was taken by the US President Joe Biden, that the US troops will be leaving the country by September 11th, right, it's a very important specification with that respect, right. As you know that the troops are basically preparing for the departure, right. They will also try to hand over the critical Bagram Air Base, where the NATO forces and US special forces are basically residing over there since many years, and they have already been taken place for that purpose. Okay, the command remains with the US forces until September, or until September 11th, right. And there are real fears about the state of affairs in Afghanistan. Okay, once the US leaves, who would fill that vacuum? Whether the Taliban would again, command back to Afghanistan, right? Whether the Taliban would return, whether the anarchy will return, or the Afghanistan forces will be able to sustain the country is expected to deliver, the good governance to the citizens, or still, right, they will dive to the civil wars. These questions are still, in the mind. Okay, this rejuvenated Islamic militants, including this Taliban, have their hopes, right, that they can already regain once the UN basically leaves the country for that purpose. So here the US forces basically the last engaged on the ground combat battle since 2014. Since then, the majority of the offenses which was done by the US or the NATO is basically the air strikes. So there was no major ground combat operations specifically on the soils of Afghanistan. Majority of these ground battle operations or ground combat operations, combat operations are basically airborne, not on the ground. So it's very, very important. Their air assets are no longer exist now because they have already planned to leave. Okay, and in future, if any air missions have to be launched, they will be done from the outside of the country, and that too, that the Afghanistan support is very, very crucial for that purpose. A large US contingent of the special forces will protect the US embassy compound, which is currently also located in Kabul. Okay, here it's very, very important that Kabul International Airport will also be protected. Okay, specifically with the help of these Turkish forces, which are basically also located on in the Taliban controlled territory with that respect. So it's very, very important. So US is expected also to give some sort of this, the special visas for the Afghanistan, which is basically wanting to leave the country, Afghanistan, and who have basically helped the US in the war effort. So it's again very, very important step which will be taken by the US specifically to control this type of situations in the Afghanistan. And another one is basically the NATO's mission. The NATO is basically, a force where it's also involved some sort of the operations in the Afghanistan. So US mission was declared over in 2015, which was followed by some sort of a handling of security back to the Afghanistan. However, this Afghanistan government is still dependent on the US aid for their survival, specifically after 2015. But the NATO forces have now started to withdraw. But the final mission, will not be declared over until the NATO completely withdrawn from the Afghan soil. Okay, and the US, as US has made it very, very clear that it will have, all authority to conduct the airstrikes, the counter-terrorism operations against Al Qaeda, against the Taliban or any other terrorism group with that respect. So it's very, very crucial with that respect how the US would be responding in such situations. Okay. The next is basically the police action at the Golden Temple in 1995. So it's a very 1955. Sorry. So it's a very, very important. So the issue was there. An event was organized by SGPC. Okay, that marks the police action that took place at the Golden Temple in the Afghanistan in Amritsar in 1955. Okay, so here SGPC means their Guru Prabandhak Committee. Okay. Shiromani Guru Prabandhak Committee. So it's a very, very important, right? So here the action was taken during that time when the Punjabi Suba Morcha was basically protesting, right? And the movement was related to the statehood which should be given to the Punjab, specifically for the Punjabi speaking people with that respect. Okay. Now it's very, very important. The movement was basically headed by the Shiromani Akali Dal, right? And this basically took place as soon as the country became independent, right, after 1945. And the slogans which was basically raised during that time, that the Punjabi Suba Amar Rahe, that type of slogans was basically raised, right? And there was also some slogans which was banned in parts of the Punjab because of fearing of the law and order situation may get deteriorated. Section 144 was basically imposed. Okay. Now, the Shiromani Akali Dal, which was supposed to be, or which was opposing the idea of this banning of these slogans, specifically the banning of these freedom of speech. So they have passed a resolution for peaceful and non-violent resolution or non-violent protest for that respect. Okay, the most important leader of Shiromani Akali Dal, Master Tara Singh, was basically arrested in May 1955, right, for raising this type of slogans. Now, after arresting the leader Master Tara Singh, okay, the movement also got spread, from other parts of the country also, right, specifically in the Punjab, and the leaders basically started demanding in Haryana also, right, such type of state, just like which was demanding in basically in the Punjab. Okay, now the police actions. Now police entered into the premises, right, in the Golden Temple. They closed the community kitchen, right. The utensils that were seized, that were used for cooking the food, right. The head priest of the temple was basically subsequently arrested. The offices of Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee was basically raided. The Shiromani Akali Dal offices was also raided at that point of the time. The consequences was very bad. Okay, the action which basically strengthened the movement. The more people were arrested over the period of the time. The ban on the slogans were basically subsequently lifted. It was forced to lift, right? And after some time, the Master Tara Singh, who was the basically leader, right, for this Shiromani Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee, right, which was subsequently released. Okay, and the Shiromani Akali Dal basically condemned the move and demanded basically the inquiry of all such events that was basically occurred at that point of the time. So it's very, very important, that was taken at that point of the time. Okay, next you have the Vatican embezzlement trial. Okay, so here a Catholic Italian cleric, right, named the Cardinal Angelo Becciu have basically, he has to face a trial for the corruption charges, right, in the court of the Vatican, right. So here a judge of the Vatican basically sued a cleric, Cardinal Angelo Becciu, for the purpose of, the trial for the corruption. So it's very, very important. The cardinal is basically accused on involving on some sort of a financial crimes. Okay, these financial crimes are basically related to the embezzlement of the church funds. Okay, so here the cardinal is among the many people who were basically the church clergy who have basically accused of making this illegal purchases using this church funds. So what they have done is they have illegally purchased some items using the church funds, and the decision by the Pope to allow the cardinal to stand the trial is seen an effort to improve the reputation of the Catholic churches, specifically in the Vatican, right, when it's come to the handling of these financial crimes, specifically in the Vatican. So Cardinal Becciu is basically an influential person, and by allowing the Pope to try the Becciu is very, very important for checking this financial irregularity in the church, specifically in Catholic Church, right? And it's very, very important step with that respect. The crime was very, very, the crime was that the Becciu was basically involved in buying off the plush apartment, specifically in the central London, using the church money, and he has basically routed it through some sort of illegal offshore accounts through the shell companies with that respect. So Cardinal was once very close aide to the Pope, right? Now he was basically in charge of the Vatican Secretariat of the state, right, that look after the donations which was given to the church. Okay. Now once the accusations related to this embezzlement, this routing of this money through offshore accounts and shell companies was basically came, okay, the Cardinal siphoned off the church money, right, related to some sort of its relatives in the London, and the Cardinal even claimed that he is innocent, right, and he has nothing to do with that amount of the property. But the financial crimes such as that have been accused of the loss of the millions of the dollars to the church, right, and that lost funds basically intended to be used specifically for the Pope's charity with that respect. Okay. Next, you have the Turkey's pull out the the Convention on the Women, right? So here very, very important, the Turkey, which is a country or which is also a member of the NATO, have recently pulled out from the Istanbul Convention, which is also related to the violence against the woman, right? And this move of the Turkey have criticized the Turkey, right, from across the world. So President Erdogan have repealed the treaty, right, that the country have signed during the approval. So this development, right, is shocking, because in Turkey there is very high violence of of any sort of atrocities against the woman. So it's very very important that the Turkey should not have been repealed, right, this type of treaty in the country like Turkey, where lot of atrocities against the women are openly going on. So Istanbul Convention is basically the human rights treaty which is related to the woman, right, and it was basically established by the Council of Europe to protect the woman against the violence. The treaty is also having aims, right, to persecute the individuals for the crimes against the woman, to ensure the gender equality, right, to rehabilitate the victims of the violence, right, and more than 30 countries from the Europe have signed this treaty, including the Turkey, okay, which was open for ratification from 2011 onward, okay, and the Turkey was at that point of the time was the first country to ratify this treaty, right, through a domestic law. The government has said that it remains committed for the protection of the lives of the women, but the country also said that it cannot allow the law to be misused by certain sections of the people. Okay. Now let us understand what are the reasons for the withdrawal from this Istanbul Convention, right, by the Turkey. So there have been the reasons, right, which are stated that the treaty challenges some sort of a traditionalist belief, such as marriage, customs, divorce structures, etc. Other reasons could be the promotion of the homosexuality in the society, right, which is against the Turkish family customs, right, and this have been terms of very regressive measures with that aspect, and that could be one of the reasons from the withdrawal of such treaty. If you could see the domestic violence in the Turkey, so Turkey ranks very low, that is around 133 out of 156 countries, right. It is according to the global gender gap report, and honor killings basically are quite high in the Turkey. More than 38% of the women are experiencing the domestic violence from their partners, right, and there was no evidence of the infanticide data in our country. Okay, so the women organizations basically they are opposing this type of move of Turkey, where the more than 38% of women are basically experiencing the domestic violence. So it's very very important in that aspect. Okay, the next is something which is related to the Taal volcano. Okay, the Taal volcano is located in the Philippines. Okay, so according to the government of the Philippines, right, the Taal volcano, which is the active volcano, right, can basically can basically erupt at any point of the time, according to the government of the Philippines, or according to the advisory which is issued by the government of the Philippines. Okay, and the many people, thousands of the people are basically evacuated, okay, from the site of the Taal volcano, because it can erupt at any point of the time. So it's very very important. Okay, now regarding the Taal volcano is basically located in the Philippines. It's a large caldera which is filled by the Taal Lake, and it is located in the province of the Batangas, right, and it is considered most active volcano in the Philippines, right, and it has around 34 historical eruptions till now, and all these volcanoes are basically concentrated in the volcano island near the Taal Lake. And as you know that this caldera lake that we are talking is formed, right, during such type of eruptions, right, in many years. And this volcano is also a part of the ring of fire. Okay, this ring of fire is basically consists of the active volcanoes. Okay, and and one such volcano is also the Tal volcano. About 3,000 residents have already been left home from the high risk villages all around the Tal volcanoes, and the Tal volcanoes was basically erupted since 1952 around 33 times and has displaced more than 3,76,000 people from the nearby areas. The last eruptions was basically taken place in January 12, 2020 with that respect. As you know that the volcano is basically very high in terms of the sulfur dioxide gas emissions. These sulfur dioxide gas emissions is basically very high, right? Is around 22,000 tons per day erupted during such type of emissions from this Tal volcano. Okay, next, the postpaid mini. So it's a very important that the digital payment and financial service platform Paytm have launched this postpaid mini. Okay, this was launched on 5th July 2021. This postpaid mini services was launched in the partnership of the Aditya Birla Finance Limited. Okay, now it's simply an extension of the Paytm's buy now pay later service, right? And it is basically seeking to drive an affordability among the people, right, who are new to the credit, right, for that respect. And it's a small ticket instant loans facility which will be provided with much flexibility to the users, right, that will help to manage their household expenses in order to maintain some sort of a liquidity and the stress during the COVID-19 scenario. And the next thing that will be coming to your mind, that how could this loan will be repaid. So this Paytm postpaid is given a period of around 30 days for the repayment of these loans, that too at 0% interest rate. Okay, further there will be no annual fees or activation charges, right, but there will be definitely a minimal convenience fee that will be taken from the consumers. Okay, now what is the significance of this postpaid money? So this postpaid mini service would help the new to credit citizens in starting their credit journey, definitely in that respect, and to develop some sort of a financial discipline among the people. It will also help in driving some sort of a consumption in the economy. So service would also then help the users to manage their liquidity by clearing their bills or by clearing their payments on the time in that respect. Okay, the next, the NASA receives the first sample of the asteroid Ryugu. So it's a very important, right, with that respect. So here the American Space Agency, the NASA, or the National Aeronautics Space Limited, okay, Space Administration, have received the first sample of the asteroid Ryugu, right, that have returned to Earth in December 2020 by the Japanese Aerospace Exploring Agency JAXA, plane Hayabusa with that respect. Okay, so here the samples from the asteroid Ryugu is one such first sample to leave the Japan for the USA, right, for the preliminary investigation. With that respect, right, the scientists will examine these samples to determine the basic natures of the rock of the asteroid Ryugu. And this, this performance or this analysis of these rocks samples will be performed in the electron microscopy lab in the structural engineering division of Johnson in the NASA. Okay. Now, regarding asteroid Ryugu, the asteroid Ryugu was also known as 162-173 Ryugu. It was also designed as 1993 Zayu 3, right? And it is basically the near Earth object, right? And it is basically circulating nearby Earth, and it is potentially hazardous asteroid, which is basically belongs to an Apollo group. Okay. And regarding its diameter, it is around having 1 kilometer of diameter. And it's a dark object, okay, and the world scientists basically started looking toward the asteroid Ryugu to find out some clues regarding the origin of our solar system with that respect. The Ryugu was first discovered in May 1999 by the astronomers with the Lincoln Near Earth Asteroid Research at Lincoln's lab in the United States. Since then, the scientist community is looking for the many other evidences for this asteroid Ryugu. Okay, and the asteroid Ryugu was basically named, right, in September 2015. The Ryugu means the dragon place, right, which is some sort of a magical underwater place in Japanese folktale regarding Hayabusa, which has brought these samples from the asteroid Ryugu. Is an asteroid sample return mission, right? It is operated by the Japan State Space Agency, which is also known as JAXA, right? It is basically a successor of Hayabusa, simple Hayabusa, and the Hayabusa 2 was launched in December 2014, okay, and their mission was basically extended till 2031 with some advancement of this technology. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you very much. We'll meet again tomorrow for next current affairs. Thank you.